My fiancé told me he needed a couple of months to explore his feelings for another woman before our wedding, so I gave him exactly what he asked for: freedom. By Monday afternoon, his clothes were in a storage unit. The locksmith was changing my front door, and 80 wedding guests were receiving cancellation emails. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 32, and until one Saturday morning, I genuinely believed I had already survived the difficult part of adulthood. I had a stable career as a regional territory manager and owned a restored Victorian house outside Savannah that my grandmother had left me. I spent 18 months bringing it back to life, and after my fiancé, Dean Mercer, moved in, the house slowly started feeling like ours. We'd been together 3.5 years, engaged for 8 months, and our wedding was less than 3 months away. Dean was charming, social, effortlessly likable. We met through my friend Natalie, and by 6 months, he was practically living at my place. By 3 years, I proposed. Looking back, the warnings had always been there. Dean had grown up handsome and socially gifted, and he'd learned young that charm could smooth over almost anything. At the time, I called that confidence. Dean's family embraced me quickly, except his older brother Victor, who never seemed comfortable with the fact that I'd inherited a historic home. "Must be nice getting a house handed to you," he'd joke. Dean always dismissed it. "Victor's jealous." I believed him. Then there was Tessa Lang, Dean's best friend from college. Tessa worked in digital marketing and called herself a brand strategist. The first time we met, she looked me over and said, "Dean normally dates women with more creative energy." I smiled. "I use mine on things that don't require hashtags." She laughed. I wasn't joking. From that day forward, we maintained the kind of politeness people use when they both understand they'd never voluntarily share a table. She was always around. Coffee with Dean before work, lunch meetings, late-night phone calls, wedding planning conversations that somehow required her opinion. Once, about a year into my relationship with Dean, I returned from getting drinks at a party and found Tessa standing close behind him, one hand resting low on his back while she whispered into his ear. Dean laughed. He didn't move away. The second he noticed me, he stepped sideways. Tessa smiled. I told myself adults could have opposite-sex friends, that trust mattered, and that jealousy destroyed relationships. Eventually, I convinced myself to ignore it. My friend Rachel never trusted Tessa. The Friday night before everything collapsed, Rachel sat with me on my porch drinking iced tea. Dean was upstairs. Tessa had called him twice. Rachel glanced toward the upstairs window. "That woman has the energy of someone patiently waiting for your boyfriend to become available." I laughed. "She has her own dating life." "So do sharks. Doesn't mean I swim with them." I told her she was ridiculous. Less than 12 hours later, I wished I'd listened. Saturday morning, I was working on quarterly projections at the kitchen table, coffee beside my laptop. Dean came downstairs around 10. He didn't make coffee, didn't check his phone. He just sat across from me. That alone made me close the laptop. "What's wrong?" He rubbed his palms together. "We need to talk." My first thought was the wedding. Guest list, caterer, venue, normal disasters. Then he said, "I think we should take a break." I stared at him. From wedding planning? From us? For several seconds, I genuinely thought I'd misunderstood. Dean started speaking carefully. He had been doing a lot of thinking. Marriage was permanent. He needed to be certain. There were feelings he hadn't properly examined. I remember watching his mouth move while something cold slowly spread through my chest. "What feelings?" He hesitated, then said her name. "Tessa." Of course. Tessa had apparently confessed that she'd been in love with him for years. And Dean, my fiancé, the man whose suit was already hanging upstairs for our wedding, had feelings for her too. "How long?" "A while." "How long is a while?" He looked away. "Couple months." That hurt more than the confession. Not because he had feelings. Because while I was tasting wedding cakes and reviewing guest lists, he had already been imagining another woman. Dean leaned forward. "I don't want to cheat on you, Claire." He said it like I should appreciate his integrity. "I want to handle this honestly." What exactly are you asking me? Maybe we pause things. A month? 2 months. I figure out what this is with Tessa, and then we'll know. I waited. Surely there was another sentence coming. There wasn't. You want to date Tessa? Explore things? While I'm waiting? He sighed. Don't make it sound ugly. I almost laughed. Dean, explain the attractive version. His jaw tightened. You should want me to be sure before we get married. I thought accepting my proposal meant you were sure. This is exactly why I was scared to tell you. That sentence changed something in me. Suddenly, the whole structure became obvious. The house stayed here. My income stayed here. Our wedding plans stayed suspended. Dean got to try Tessa, and if the fantasy disappointed him, he returned to the woman with the stable career, beautiful house, and engagement ring. I wasn't his partner. I was insurance. Dean continued. Tessa understands parts of me you don't. The creative side. She makes me feel seen. I stared at him. I'd rearranged business trips for vendor appointments, spent weekends shaping our home around the life he said he wanted, and paid most of the wedding expenses. Apparently none of that counted because Tessa understood his creative side. Okay, I said. Dean blinked. Okay? You should explore it. Relief flashed across his face. For maybe 2 seconds. Then I continued. But you won't be doing it while engaged to me. His expression changed. What? No break. No waiting period. No keeping me here in case Tessa disappoints you. Claire, if you want her, choose her. He stared at me. And if I realize this was a mistake? I looked directly at him. Then you'll have learned something? His face went pale. You'd throw away 3.5 years that easily? That almost impressed me. You're asking to date another woman 3 months before our wedding, and somehow I'm the one throwing it away? He stood. This is controlling. No. Controlling would be telling you that you can't see her. I closed my laptop. You absolutely can. Then I pointed toward the staircase. Pack a bag. Dean just stared. You're serious? Completely. This is my home too. No. I kept my voice calm. You lived here with me. The deed is mine. The house was my grandmother's. He started crying then. Actual tears. And for one dangerous second, instinct told me to comfort him. 3.5 years doesn't disappear instantly. Then I remembered why he was crying. Because he'd expected freedom without consequences. Dean pulled the engagement ring from his finger and placed it beside my laptop. So that's it? I looked at the ring. Then at him. You already decided that before you came downstairs. He left that afternoon with one suitcase and went to Victor's apartment. I think he expected me to call by Sunday. I didn't. I called Natalie and Rachel instead. Are you busy tomorrow? Rachel didn't even ask why. What size boxes? By Sunday afternoon, the 3 of us were packing Dean's life. Then Natalie found a box inside Dean's desk. Cards from Tessa. Birthday cards. Congratulations cards. Random handwritten notes. Several ended with hearts. Natalie read one silently. Her expression changed. How long has she been doing this? I looked at the stack. Apparently longer than I've been paying attention. Monday morning, movers transferred everything into a storage unit. At noon, Dean arrived at the house expecting to walk inside. His key didn't work. The locksmith had already changed the locks. On the kitchen counter visible through the window was an envelope containing the storage address and access code. My phone started ringing. Dean. Then Victor. Then Dean again. I didn't answer. Victor finally texted. You threw him out because he communicated his feelings. This is emotional abuse. Healthy relationships require space. Dean deserves someone mature enough to understand that. I sent him the storage unit address. Since you're concerned about Dean's housing situation, here's where his things are. You can help him move them. Then I muted him. 5 minutes later, I opened my laptop. There were 80 people on our wedding guest list. I typed one sentence. Due to an unexpected change in circumstances, our April wedding has been canceled. 3 months earlier, Dean had cried when we booked the venue. Saturday morning, he'd asked me to wait while he tried another woman. I clicked send. And somewhere across town, Dean was about to realize that when he'd asked me for freedom, I hadn't misunderstood him at all. I had simply taken him seriously. By the end of that first week, Dean had stopped asking me to reconsider. He'd moved on to explaining to everyone else why I was the problem. Victor became Dean's loudest supporter, posting about controlling women and people who punished honesty. According to their version, Dean had simply asked for space. I'd supposedly thrown him out and canceled the wedding because I couldn't handle the truth. Somehow, the part where he wanted to date Tessa while keeping me engaged kept disappearing. Ironically, several mutual friends weren't surprised. Apparently, everyone knew Tessa had feelings for him. Everyone except me. Dean's mother called 2 days after the wedding cancellation. Zoe sounded exhausted. What happened? I told her exactly what Dean had said at my kitchen table. When I finished, she went silent. Then she whispered, I warned him about Tessa. That surprised me. You did? Years ago. I told him friendships like that need boundaries once you're serious with someone. She sighed. I'm sorry, Claire. Arthur only sent one text. You deserved better than that. Between the venue, photographer, caterer, and other deposits, I lost just over $8,000. Rachel winced. That hurts. Cheaper than divorce. Meanwhile, Dean and Tessa stopped pretending they needed time to explore anything. Within days, they were together publicly. Brunch photos, cocktail photos, pictures downtown. Tessa posted one caption. Sometimes your person has been beside you all along. Someone sent me a screenshot. I deleted it. What bothered me wasn't that they'd gotten together. That part was inevitable. It was how quickly Dean looked comfortable, like the life we'd spent 3.5 years building could be replaced before our wedding invitations had even been returned. 2 weeks after the breakup, Dean texted me. I think some of my things got missed. Can I come by Saturday? I almost said no, then decided finishing this once was better than giving him an excuse to keep contacting me. Saturday, noon, 10 minutes. At 11:58, a black car pulled into my driveway. Dean got out, then Tessa. Of course. I was standing on the porch. Rachel happened to be inside after stopping by earlier. Dean looked uncomfortable. Tessa looked like she'd arrived to collect a prize. Hey, Claire. I looked at Dean. She stays outside. Dean sighed. She's just helping me. She can help from the driveway. Tessa crossed her arms. We're all adults. Then act like one and wait by the car. Her smile tightened. You know, Dean told me you always had an issue with me. No. I had an issue with you touching my fiancé like he already belonged to you. Dean stiffened. Tessa smiled. Well, turns out maybe he did. She wanted that to hurt. Maybe it did. But I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. Congratulations. Her smile faltered. I stepped aside for Dean. You've got 10 minutes. He moved toward the door. Tessa followed. I blocked her. Not you. Oh my God, I'm just helping. You're not entering my house. She stepped closer. Get over yourself. Then she put a hand against my shoulder and tried to push past me. I caught her wrist automatically. Don't touch me. She jerked backward. I released her immediately, but she'd already lost her balance and dropped onto one knee against the porch step. Her sunglasses hit the boards. For 1 second, nobody spoke. Then Rachel appeared behind me. Well, she said. That escalated efficiently. Tessa scrambled up, face burning. You grabbed me. After you pushed me. I didn't push you. Rachel leaned against the doorway. You did. Tessa finally seemed to notice we had a witness. I pointed toward the driveway. You wait there. Dean gets his things. Or both of you leave. She stared at me, then stormed back to the car. Dean went inside alone and left with the last of his things in under 6 minutes. After they drove away, Rachel stood beside me on the porch. She really thought she was walking into this house. Yes. She also really thought you'd fight her over him. I watched their car disappear. I already gave him away. That night was the first time since the breakup that I slept straight through until morning. 3 weeks later, I learned Tessa had been chasing a major marketing contract with an old college friend of mine. When Christine and I met for coffee, she told me she'd already decided to pass because Tessa had been unreliable for weeks. I told her only what had happened between Dean, Tessa, and me. Nothing more. 2 weeks later, Tessa announced she was stepping back from certain client work to focus on personal growth. Soon afterward, the expensive brunches disappeared. Her posts became vague messages about growth and distance, and Dean almost completely vanished from her feed. About 2 months after the breakup, Natalie called while Rachel and I were sanding an old fishing boat. "Tessa's leaving." I stopped working. "Leaving where?" "Atlanta. Apparently, she needed a bigger market, better clients, more opportunities. She'd offered to try long distance with Dean. I already knew the answer. He said no? Apparently." Rachel looked over. "What?" "Tessa moved to Atlanta." She considered that for a second. "And the Great Soul Connection?" "Couldn't survive Interstate 75. Rachel nodded solemnly. "Tragic." I laughed. Not because Dean was miserable. At least, not entirely. What I felt was quieter than revenge. For months, he'd treated our life like something permanent enough to place on hold while he tested a fantasy. Now, the fantasy had disappeared, and the life he'd expected to return to wasn't waiting. That evening, I sat alone on my porch. The house was quieter without Dean. At first, that quiet had felt like absence. Now it felt like space. For the first time since he'd sat across from me at that kitchen table, I understood something. Dean hadn't destroyed my future. He'd only removed himself from it. 3 months after Dean moved out, my life had settled into something I hadn't expected: peace. Rachel and I finished restoring the old fishing boat, and I'd been promoted to Southeast Regional Director. Meanwhile, Dean's life wasn't recovering nearly as smoothly. His breakup story had started falling apart. Victor's social media campaign disappeared after Tessa left for Atlanta, and even Dean's parents seemed to realize what he'd thrown away. I stayed out of it. Dean's life wasn't mine anymore. 6 months after the breakup, I was invited to our mutual friend Jamie's birthday party. I almost skipped it when I learned Dean might be there. Natalie wouldn't let me. "You've spent 6 months avoiding places because Dean might exist in them." So I went. For the first 2 hours, everything was fine. Then Natalie disappeared toward the front of the house and returned with an expression I recognized immediately. "Dean's here." "And?" "He's drunk." Rachel glanced toward the house. "How drunk?" Natalie thought about it. Giving speeches, nobody requested drunk. Perfect. Apparently, Dean had arrived with coworkers after already drinking somewhere else. By the time he walked in, he'd reached that point where alcohol convinces you every thought deserves an audience. I stayed near the back porch. I could hear him anyway, laughing too loudly, telling people how amazing he was doing, talking about new beginnings and how sometimes losing the wrong person was actually a blessing. Rachel looked at me. "You want to leave?" "No." That surprised even me. I wasn't going to let Dean decide where I was allowed to exist. 30 minutes later, he found me. He stepped onto the back porch with 2 coworkers behind him. His eyes were glassy. His shirt was untucked on one side. When he saw me, his expression changed. "Claire." The porch got quieter. "Hey, Dean." "Don't hey, Dean me." Rachel straightened beside me. Natalie stopped smiling. Dean stepped closer. "You wrecked my life." There it was. 6 months of consequences condensed into 4 words. I kept my voice calm. "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." People nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Dean gestured toward me with his drink. "You threw me out. You canceled everything. You turned everyone against me because I was honest with you. You asked me to wait while you dated Tessa. I asked for space. To date Tessa. To figure out my feelings. By dating Tessa." His jaw tightened. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make everything sound ugly." I almost smiled. Dean, if repeating what happened makes it sound ugly, maybe I'm not the problem. Someone near the doorway coughed to hide a laugh. Dean heard it. His face reddened. Tessa understood you from the beginning, he said. She knew you were controlling. You were always threatened by her. I tilted my head. Speaking of Tessa, how's Atlanta? That landed. His expression cracked for half a second. Then anger covered it. She needed to focus on her career. Right. We're still friends. I'm happy for you. You think this is funny? No. And I meant it. There was nothing funny about watching someone destroy their own life and then spend 6 months searching for someone else to blame. Dean stepped closer. You couldn't give me 2 months, 3.5 years together, and you couldn't give me 2 months to figure myself out. You weren't backpacking through Europe, Dean. You wanted 2 months to sleep with another woman while I kept your place warm. His co-workers exchanged a look. That isn't what I said. It was exactly what you asked for. I was trying to be authentic. And I let you. He stopped. That was the part he could never answer. I hadn't forbidden Tessa. I hadn't threatened him. I hadn't begged. I'd simply refused to participate. You wanted freedom, I said. I gave it to you. You punished me for it. No. I removed myself from the arrangement. Dean laughed bitterly. You've got your house, your career, your perfect little life. You think you won. I don't care about winning. Bullshit. You hated Tessa. I didn't hate Tessa. That was true. I hated what you expected me to tolerate because of her. The porch had gone completely silent. Dean finally seemed to notice how many people were listening, but he was too far into it to stop. You're going to end up alone, he said, his voice cracking. Because the second somebody has feelings you don't like, you cut them out. I stood from the porch railing. No. I looked directly at him. I wanted to marry someone who was sure about me. He said nothing. You weren't. Still nothing. So I got out of your way and let you be with the woman you were sure about. His eyes dropped. I waited a beat. How'd that work out? Go to hell. I nodded. I'm going home. Natalie and Rachel moved with me toward the side gate. Dean followed. This isn't over, Claire. I kept walking. You owe me an explanation. That made me stop. I turned around. No, Dean. You owe yourself one. His face twisted. For what? For why you thought I'd still be waiting after you chose someone else. He stared at me. There was one thing I'd wanted to say for 6 months. You didn't lose me because you had feelings for Tessa. I kept my voice low. You lost me because you believed my love for you meant I would accept being your backup plan. He didn't answer. And you were wrong. I walked out. Later, Jamie told us Dean's meltdown continued after we left. He argued with several people before his coworkers finally took him home. By Monday, everyone knew. For 6 months, Dean and Victor had tried to shape the breakup into a story where I was the cold, controlling fiancé who punished a man for being emotionally honest. One drunken party accomplished what I never could. Dean told everyone the truth himself, not with facts, with behavior. After that, the updates became less frequent. Dean eventually started looking for work elsewhere. Tessa stayed in Atlanta. I wished them well. From a very comfortable distance. Rachel and I sold the fishing boat for a decent profit and started another restoration project. My promotion brought new clients, more travel, and new people into my life. People who didn't know Dean. People who had never heard of Tessa. People who didn't look at me and see half of a failed engagement. One night, almost a year after everything happened, I sat alone on my wraparound porch. The same porch where Rachel had warned me about Tessa. The same house Dean had once assumed would wait for him while he figured out whether another woman was better. For a long time, I'd thought losing him meant losing the future I'd planned. The wedding, the family, the life we'd pictured. But sitting there, I finally understood the mistake. Dean had never been the future. He'd just been someone I'd planned to bring with me. Dean wanted to explore his feelings. I let him. He found Tessa. then lost her. What I found was something I hadn't realized I'd been giving away piece by piece for 3.5 years. Myself. And that turned out to be worth a lot more than $8,000 in wedding deposits.